Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannett. Today is Tuesday, August 13th. Today is day 312 since the attacks by Hamas on the southern part of Israel. Iran, weary of war, weighs retaliation against Israel for the assassination of the Hamas leader, Ismail Haniyeh. It was reported in the news that in public, Iranian officials are continuing to warn of a tough reprisal to punish Israel. But in private meetings with the leaders of its armed proxies, according to those familiar with conversations, Iran has called for caution, seeking to balance any show of force with the desire to avoid an all-out war in the region. Last night, the Washington Post had a breaking story that Biden and Harris's campaign advisors and a Trump ally were allegedly targeted by Iranian hackers, according to an FBI probe. The FBI investigation began in June after Roger Stone's email was allegedly compromised and hackers attempted to break into the accounts of Democratic presidential campaign advisors. People familiar with the matter have indicated. The Washington Post also published a video investigation of the June 8th raid in the Nusrat camp in Gaza, where 4 hostages were rescued, but scores of Palestinians were killed. A review of the videos show how it happened in a Washington Post report. The investigation showed the Israeli military employed heavy airstrikes for nearly 4 hours in a dense residential area where Hamas was holding the captives. The raid left 274 people dead, according to Palestinian authorities, and it was the most successful hostage rescue operation of the war. Today's English version of the Israeli news outlet Haaretz also issued the results of an investigation about how the Israeli army uses Palestinian civilians to inspect potentially booby-trapped tunnels in Gaza. An Israeli soldier is quoted as saying, "Our lives are more important than their lives." Gazan civilians who are not suspected of terrorism have been detained and then sent as human shields to search tunnels and houses before Israeli Defense Forces soldiers enter, with the full knowledge of senior Israeli officers, several sources have said. The IDF claims that this practice is forbidden, but the Haaretz report tells a different story. It cites videos of the practices that were released months ago by Al Jazeera. The article quotes Israeli soldiers who said that the practice has been happening all over Gaza since the beginning of the war. Only a ceasefire deal in Gaza would hold Iran back from directly retaliating against Israel from the assassination of the Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh on its soil, according to 3 senior Iranian officials. That was reported in Reuters. Iran's foreign ministry said that calls for restraint regarding retaliation against Israel from France, Germany, and Britain lack political logic and contradict the principles of international law. And they called on 3 countries to once and for all stand up against the war in Gaza and the warmongering of Israel. That was Iran's foreign ministry. The Washington Post reported that Iran has expressed concern that Israel and the US might target its nuclear program, using the broader conflict as a pretext, citing a Lebanese source that has close ties to Hezbollah, who added that the Iranians and their allies are treading cautiously. An Iraqi parliament member with links to the Iranian-backed militias in the country told the Post that Iran does not want to expand the war. The Israeli Defense Forces said that they attacked Hezbollah targets in South Lebanon and that anti-tank missiles fired from Lebanon fell in open areas in Israel's north. 2 Hezbollah operatives have been killed in the last 24 hours in an airstrike on a vehicle near Brashit in southern Lebanon, according to a Saudi news channel, and the Israeli Defense Forces later confirmed. At a security assessment meeting at an intelligence base in North Israel, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said that the residents must be, quote, returned safely to their homes after we make Hezbollah withdraw north of the Litani River, adding that Israel is, quote, engaged in preparing all the options to be able to attack whenever we decide, end quote. In terms of the hostage ceasefire deal, Israel has presented a more rigid stance in recent ceasefire talks, the New York Times reported, based on unpublished documents detailing Israel's negotiating positions. Israel's negotiating team reportedly added 5 new requests in July to the proposal that was first presented in May. You'll recall the May proposal was based on Biden's 3 different phases. The points that were presented in May included that Israel would remain in control of the Philadelphia corridor. That's the corridor that runs along the border between Gaza and Egypt. Additionally, Israel showed less flexibility about allowing displaced Palestinians to return to northern Gaza once the fighting ends. This is a quote: "The coming days will be filled with a lot of pressure and disinformation in an attempt to influence the deal," a source involved in the negotiations between Israel and Hamas for a ceasefire agreement told Haaretz, adding that Hamas's recent announcement of a hostage's murder and the injury of 2 others might be an effort to pressure Israel to be more flexible in the talks. An IDF spokesperson stated that Israel has no information to disprove or confirm Hamas's claim, but does not dismiss the possibility that it could be true. A group representing the family members of Israeli hostages held in Gaza said that far-right national security Itamar Ben-Gvir time and time again prevents a deal to bring the hostages back, and that his actions and words, he endangers the chance to bring them all home. The U.S. Secretary of State Blinken spoke to the Turkish Foreign Minister Fidan about the importance of Hamas's return to negotiations on August 15th to finalize the framework for achieving an immediate and durable ceasefire in Gaza and securing the release of all the hostages, the State Department said. Blinken is scheduled to travel to the Middle East on Tuesday, Axios reporter Ravid said on X, adding that the top American diplomat is said to visit Qatar, Egypt, and Israel. The family of hostages in Hamas captivity in Gaza are objecting to their loved ones being mentioned during events commemorating the anniversary of the October 7th massacre. That happened in a meeting that was held between the staff from the Captives and Missing Persons Coordinator's Office in Israel. National Security Minister Ben-Gvir and the Minister Itzhak Wasserloff of the far-right Yehudit Party visited the Temple Mount Al-Aqsa compound today. And that was Tuesday morning. They visited together with dozens of Jewish worshipers who prayed at the contested holy site, which defies the status quo there. Ben-Gvir said, "We've made significant progress in Israel's sovereignty here, and our policy is to permit Jewish prayer." But Prime Minister Netanyahu's office issued a statement saying that the status quo, which prevents non-Muslims from praying at the site, remains unchanged. There's no personal policy at the Temple Mount, neither that of the National Security Minister nor that of the events of this morning are a deviation from the status quo. The 5 Israeli army reservists that are suspected of abusing and committing sodomy against a Hamas member at the State Tema Detention Center will be released to 10 days of house arrest following agreements that were reached between the military prosecution and the defense. The Fitch credit rating announced late last night that it has downgraded the Israeli government's credit rating by 1 grade from an A+ to an A, writing that the downgrade reflects the impact of the continuation of the war in Gaza, the heightened geopolitical risks, and the military operations on multiple fronts. The agency wrote that the outlook for the Israeli economy has been declared negative because, in our view, the conflict in Gaza could well last into 2025, and that there are risks of it broadening to other fronts. Israeli airstrikes reportedly killed 19 Palestinians in central and southern Gaza on Tuesday, local medics said, and a rocket fired from Gaza crossed into Israel and landed in the Mediterranean Sea without triggering alarms, according to the IDF. Hamas leader Sinwar has managed to conduct phone calls after a long period of difficulty, according to a Saudi newspaper, citing a senior Hamas official who said that Sinwar visits various locations and gives directives once every 2 weeks, sometimes once a month. Other Hamas sources reported that only trusted individuals know his whereabouts and serve as a link between him and the rest of the organization's leadership. According to numbers issued last Thursday from the health ministry in Gaza, at least 39,929 Palestinians have been killed and 92,240 have been wounded since October 7th. Israeli security forces in the West Bank killed a Palestinian man during an operation in the Al Amari refugee camp near Ramallah, witnesses told Haaretz. And in the last couple of days in the Jordanian Times, there was an article published about how Gaza's 2,000-year-old Christian community could completely disappear. Palestine, a land deeply intertwined with the roots of Christianity, is where the earliest Christian communities emerged. The article cites Churches for Middle East Peace as having met with the Palestinian State Minister of Foreign Affairs, Farsen Akabekian, who's of Armenian origin, highlighting the gravity of the situation during our meeting when we met with her in May. She mentioned to us that Israel has killed 3% of Gazans Christians since October, and that was in May. For the first time in their 2,000-year history, Gazans Christians face the real possibility of extinction as the community's numbers steadily decline and their historical heritage stands under constant assault. The future of Christianity in Palestine hangs in the balance. And this is a quote from Mitri Rahab, the Palestinian pastor and founder of Dar al-Kalima University in Bethlehem, who said in international press, "Almost all Christian institutions in Gaza have suffered damage or destruction. Christians have lost their homes and their businesses. I'm afraid the last chapter of Christianity in Gaza is being written. May the Lord have mercy. Christ have mercy. Amen."